Ladies and gentlemen of the winning team, and if you're not already part of the winning team, you should join, because today and this month we are focusing on wisdom. And why wisdom, you might ask? Because one conclusion I've come to is that wisdom is more valuable than knowledge. I talked about this in one of my other videos about 10 steps to win in 2023 and beyond. And one of the things I was talking about in that video is how we should seek wisdom over knowledge, because wisdom, of course, is the application of knowledge. There's a lot of people who know a lot of stuff, but can they use that stuff? That's the question. So that's what we're dedicating ourselves to. And it just so happened that the wisest and the most knowledgeable person I know happened to write a book. And in this book, there is a book in the book that has 31 chapters. Yes, I'm talking about Proverbs in the Bible, which is the book about wisdom. And so I thought, let's do a chapter a day. Let's have an informal Bible study. I'm just going to read the Bible with you guys. It's very informal. I feel like this would be good if you're the type of person who's a bit like about Christianity, because as you guys know, I do everything different, right? So let's see what you guys think. If you enjoy this video, if you're enjoying this, guys, if you're feeling the vibe and you want to join the tribe, hit that subscribe. I really want you guys to tell me what you guys think in the comments. I don't want this to be like me talking at you. I don't want any of my videos, to be fair, to be like that. I prefer to start the dialogue. That's the goal of my videos. And then of course, like the video if you do. Anyways, I made such a long introduction. We're going to get straight into it. We're in Proverbs 3 and we're reading from the Passion Translation. So from verse 1, my child, if you truly want a long and satisfying life, never forget the things that I've taught you. So I love this in general, because I truly believe, I've said this in the previous two videos, that, you know, the goal of parents in our lives is for them to impart wisdom. Why does Exodus 20 tell us that if you honor your mother and father, you will live long? Because if you follow the wise leadership, the wise counsel of a good mother and father, you will have the tools to live a long life. You know what I'm saying? And so, of course, I like that it's talking to this as though it's like a father to a son, you know, father to a daughter, mother to a daughter, my child, you know what I'm saying? Yes, so it says, follow closely every truth that I've given you, then you'll have a full and rewarding life. Hold on to loyal love and don't let go. Oh, that's interesting. Loyal love. That's a good point. There's a lot of unloyal love today. And when I say unloyal, there's a lot of people who are really just in glorified business transactions in their relationships. They're not actually loyal individuals who are sticking by each other, who are loving one another, right? So when you do have loyal love, you should stick to it, right? Then you have a full and rewarding life. In verse 3, verse 3, hold on to loyal love and don't let go, and be faithful to all that you've been taught. I've just realized something. Now, I do this before all my videos anyway, but I want to do this for you guys here. So I want to ask the Holy Spirit to please reveal the scriptures to us. I believe that the Holy Spirit reveals the wisdom behind the knowledge of the Bible itself. And that's why a lot of people don't really understand the Bible, because you're not supposed to read it on its own. The Holy Spirit is supposed to kind of help you through and show the wisdom of what's actually being said. And that's why I think a lot of people get the wrong impression from the Bible, because they're just reading it. It's a bunch of knowledge, which is still helpful as it is, but you know, the wisdom is really what tells you what was the intention behind everything. And then it says, let your life be shaped by integrity with truth written upon your heart. I love this, because first things first, integrity is one of those things that I think we lack in modern society. Integrity is the type of thing that you have, which is, easiest way I would personally explain it is how you are when nobody else is around. That is what you know you're integral about. That's where you see your integrity. It's easy for us to play up games. It's easy for us to present ourselves in a certain type of way. Who you are when nobody else is watching, and when I say nobody else, I mean, of course, God is still watching. That is what really shows your integrity. Also, how you act and who you are when you're in extreme situations. A lot of people are great at holding it together, and seem like a lot of people would think that they're a super calm person, but as soon as they get triggered by anger, they become a whole nother person. It's like, where's your integrity? Because if you're really that calm of a person, then that shouldn't really have thrown you off like that, right? And it says, with truth written upon your heart. And I think, you know, one thing about society today, and there's a number of reasons, whether it be because of caring about other people's opinions, whether it be because you think God wants you to think a certain way, a lot of people are not truthful. And I think truthfulness is really the beginningness is really important when it comes to wisdom, because sometimes, you know, you got to address what it is, whatever it is, you know what I'm saying? That's why I say to the Lord exactly what I want to say, of what is true. There's no point me pretending. Like, I remember when I used to be in church, and I remember, like, you know, I remember sometimes I'd be in like a worship service, people were like raising their hands and doing all this stuff. And I used to think to myself, am I going to raise my hands right now just because everybody is, if I don't actually feel like doing it? Do you know what I'm saying? I'm going to get further in life from being truthful. Trust me. Even Jordan Peterson, who's, to mention somebody else I'm going to be talking about in one of my upcoming videos, he even says that one of his tips of things you should do in life in general is never lie, because lying is not helpful. And let me tell you something, lying is something that opens the door to the kingdom of darkness in your life, because destruction can only come from lies. The truth is something you can stand on, and I think we can all appreciate when somebody is truthful and you can tell they're being truthful. You trust somebody who maybe you don't like a lot of things about them, but at least they're honest, versus somebody who might appear perfect, but they're a liar. What are you going to really trust more? You know what I'm saying? So yeah, verse 4. That's how you'll find favor and understanding with both God and men. So practically what I just said. You will gain the reputation of living life well. Verse 5. Trust in the Lord completely and do not rely on your own opinions. With all your heart, rely on him to guide you, and he will lead you in every decision you make. I like this part because it reminds me of this theory that I have, that we all have goggles, right? The problem with us trusting in our own opinions is we see things based on, a lot of the time, based on our own experiences, and that really can skew what we think. So I'll give you guys an example of this, right? One of my most popular video actually to this date on my channel is the video where I said fat/ugly women have become overconfident, right? And a lot of gentlemen stepped in to give their opinions, that they agreed, and there was a lot of interesting thoughts. There was one guy who commented this morning, I think, and was saying that he doesn't see why he's with a woman who's overweight and he loves her, and he's a skinny guy, and so he doesn't think what I'm saying applies. And this is something, and I get where he's coming from, but it's exactly what the scripture is talking about. Just because you see something in a certain way doesn't mean that everybody agrees with you. And this is one of the problems we have in society with having certain acceptable ways of thinking. Just because you see something in a certain way doesn't mean everybody else does, right? And that's where we start to have division, because it's like if I was to say out loud, I don't feel marginalized, I don't feel held back in life being a black person, right? For example, I don't feel held back in life because of being a woman. Those statements are true. Now, if I say that to certain people, because of their opinion, because of their experience, they're going to completely have an issue with that, where it's going to stop them. And this is why I say wisdom brings you into the winning mentality, right? You're gonna, because you're so obsessed with whatever you've been through, you don't, first of all, you're assuming I must not have been through what you've been through because I'm saying what I'm saying. Second of all, you've limited yourself based on your opinion, based on your experience, and now you've limited your own life. Whereas if you didn't have that perspective, maybe you wouldn't be in, maybe you would see that there's more opportunities than you can see before you. And that's why I think wisdom tells you this, you know, that what was it that it just said, trust in the Lord completely and do not rely on your own opinions. One thing that's important to me as a Christian, and that is always reinforced, is how you have to speak the scriptures of the Bible over your life and into your mind, right? I am fearfully and wonderfully made. You know, things like that. No weapon forged against me shall prosper. Jesus came to give me life abundantly. I overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of my testimony. These are scriptures that I repeat to myself, you know, even in prayer, because the reason for doing that and trusting in that is because if I don't, I'm going to become subject to this matrix, my opinions of things that have happened, how people have treated me. And I've been treated more, but I've not been treated like I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. I've been treated, and I've been believed, and a lot of people believe that, you know, there's just these powers in the world that can overtake you, and that's all that there is, and life is just unfair, and life is this, and life is unfair to an extent. But then there's also that there's God, and sometimes life being unfair is not that life is unfair, it's also that you're not utilizing what you have, which is God himself, which is why it says trust. What does it say? Trust in the Lord completely and do not rely on your own opinions. With all your heart, rely on him to guide you, and he will lead you in every decision you make. As in, you need to trust in a wisdom that's greater than you. Just like being a child, right? It's like when, I'll give you guys the analogy, you know, when a child like learns to ride a bike, and I love these types of videos where you've got like the dad and his daughter, and she's riding a bike, and she's got the, what are they called? Are they called stabilizers or something? I can't remember what they're called. But you know, the things that like the bike won't fall down if you're cycling on it, whatever. And then in that moment, that child might not believe that they can take the stabilizers off because they're like, I don't think I can do it. But then the parents like, you got this, like, I know you can do this, I'm taking this off. And then there's always that like beautiful moment where they like let go of their child and the child cycles away, and it's like this huge thing that they didn't think they could do. And that's what I believe God is very much trying to do with a lot of us, and what he wants to do with his children is, I know better than you, I will guide you in your decisions, and I probably believe in you more than you believe in yourself. And that's something that I've realized personally. One of the things I came to the conclusion of at the end of last year was God actually believes in me more than I believe in myself. And sometimes, again, these can be the limiting factors. These are the wisdoms you don't have. A lot of people just think they can't. I can't tell you how many times I get frustrated when people say they can't do something. They've never tried. They've not even tried. They've just assumed they can't do it. And so then you might say, oh, well, I was always destined to be a loser. No, you chose to be because you submitted yourself to that. And that's where you need the wise counsel of a good father that believes in you, right? Which, of course, God is the epitome, the I want to say the standard, because we'll never meet his standard, but he is the representation of that. Verse 6, become intimate with him in whatever you do, and he will lead you wherever you go. This is such a good thing, because I think people try to box God in, and that's why a lot of people don't experience God, because you think, oh, I heard so and so say they hear the voice of God, I hear so and so did this, or so and so became a pastor, so and so does this, and my life, that's not something I want to do. And so we think that God isn't involved in everything that we're doing, and he actually is. I've said this to you guys before, that a lot of the ways I get my greatest revelations is not through I was reading the Bible and then God hit me with a vision, right? Sometimes those stuff do happen. Sometimes I'm just going about my business. So I'll give you guys a very quick example. Like the other day, I decided a couple weeks ago that I was going to start watching One Piece because I wanted to watch it. I was going to wait to watch it in a different season of my life. But then all of a sudden I was like, I want to start watching One Piece. And as I started to watch it, there's lots of little things that I started to understand as I was watching it, right? And just think about life. I was thinking about the fact that, you know, people who make decisions, like for example, Luffy, who's the main character, he makes a decision. As soon as he's decided he's doing something, he does absolutely everything in all to make sure that thing happens. And it doesn't matter how people look at him, and it doesn't even matter how he looks, he always fulfills what he says he's going to do. Do you see what I'm saying? And it was like one of these things that gave me wisdom in the sense of, you know what, it's up to me to be dedicated enough to not to care what other people think. And you might say, oh, this is just an animated whatever. Okay, fine. Maybe the Lord doesn't speak to you like that. But that's how he spoke to me. Some of the things I do on my channel, people say to me stuff like, oh, you're so knowledgeable. I'm like, you don't even know where my wisdom comes from with some of this stuff. A lot of my wisdom, the things that I say, come from the most unconventional types of ways that I've had these revelations, you know. And so, you know, don't limit the way that God speaks to you, basically is what I'm saying, and become intimate with him in everything you do, right? It says in whatever you do, wherever I am, I try to always acknowledge God in whatever I'm doing, right? Even when I'm doing something I shouldn't be doing, I still talk to God about it in the time, like, oh my gosh, God, I messed up. Why am I here? Why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? He never makes me feel bad. I usually feel bad because I realize I've done the wrong thing. I should listen to him in the first place. But when you have that intimate relationship, you start to be able to learn from your situations. And so what I found, that instead of being overly overwhelmed with condemnation when I do the wrong thing, which anytime I feel like that it's because of me or the enemy, instead God is like, okay, that wasn't great. What can we learn here? What's the lesson behind this situation? You know what I'm saying? Why do you think I've allowed for this to happen to you? And then we have this very open dialogue, and I have these really interesting revelations again of like, okay, this is, and then I become wiser as a person. You know, let's go to verse 7. Don't think for a moment that you know it all, for wisdom comes when you adore him with undivided devotion and avoid everything that's wrong. Then you will find the healing refreshment your body and spirit long for. I believe everybody's body and spirit actually longs for over a true relationship with God. I believe that wholeheartedly, whether we want to acknowledge it or not. Verse 9, glorify God with all your wealth, honoring him with your first fruits, with every increase that comes to you. Now, interestingly, this comes up, and my first thought is Cain and Abel, because Cain killed Abel, as people know, and a lot of Christian people say that, oh, God wasn't as happy with Cain's, God wasn't as happy with Cain's offering as Abel, because Cain brought produce, not produce, he brought, what do you call it, like wheat or whatever, and then Abel brought an animal, right? And so God valued that the animal was killed from Abel more. Incorrect. Here's why, and this is where I actually think the term first fruits actually comes from. I actually think this phrase is used in the Bible because of Cain, right? Because think about it like this. What was the difference between the two of them? I'm going to actually read this because I got my Bible here and I know exactly where this is. It's like Genesis 4 or something, right? I want you guys to pay attention to what is actually being said here, and what's the true difference between what these guys brought. Because I don't think it's about what they brought. I think it's about how they brought what they brought and what it represented. And I think that Cain's reaction to it is very indicative of how people are today. So anyway, here we go. So we're in Genesis 4, right? Now Adam knew Eve, his wife. When the Bible says someone knew someone, man and woman, they're talking about having sex, okay? And she conceived and bore Cain. I'm reading for the ESV now because this is my actual Bible's the ESV. Anyway, as in the translation, English Standard Version, ESV. I have produced a man with the help of the Lord. And again, she bore his brother Abel. Now Abel was a keeper of sheep, and Cain was a worker of the ground. In the course of time, Cain brought to the Lord an offering of the fruit of the ground, and Abel also brought of the firstborn of his flock and of the fat of their fat portions. And the Lord had regard for Abel and his offering, but for Cain and his offering he had no regard. So Cain was very angry, and his face fell. Now, here's the interesting thing. So it says, right? Let's backtrack just slightly. In the course of time, Cain brought the Lord an offering of the fruit of the ground, and Abel also brought of the firstborn of his flock and their fat portions. I want you guys to think about the difference of the amount of effort that went into the offerings that were brought, right? It just says Cain brought the fruit of the ground. So essentially, the way I envision it is he just grabbed like some of whatever he had and he brought it to God, right? Abel brought the firstborn of his flock and their fat portions. For some reason, Abel felt convicted to not only just bring an animal, but to bring the firstborn, and then also to go as far as to the fat of their portions, right? So he's gone in and he's cut into this animal. He's put a lot of effort into the offering he brings to the Lord. And I think that's the point. It goes back to what I was saying yesterday, that in order to acquire wisdom, you must treasure it. That was in Proverbs 2, right? The difference between these two is not what they brought, it was the heart of how they brought it. Cain could have brought the third of his crop that year, the fourth. It didn't seem like Cain put that much effort. Did he want to honor God with it? Yes. Abel, on the other hand, said, oh, this is the first of what I got. This is the result of what God has done in my life. I'm going to give this back to him, and I'm going to give him the best that I can give him. It says something about his honor and respect to God, right? And that's what I think this is talking about. A lot of people get upset about, like, oh, the church is asking for money, and I kind of covered that in a previous video. Yeah, I covered that actually in my what's that video that I did? Why I don't like most Christians, or why I can't stand most Christians, right? So I covered that. So go and check that out if you want to know my real deeper thoughts on giving money to the church and why I believe in giving money to the church, kind of to do with this, right? Anyway, so yeah, just watch that video, guys, before you assume anything. Anyway, yeah. So Abel clearly had some kind of reverence, honoring, or value in what he'd received, and he directly saw that God had been the reason why he had these great things, whereas Cain just seems like, I'm just going to bring something along, it doesn't really mean that much to me, right? And it reminds me even of the story in the Bible where I think it's Jesus is talking about it, because I know it's in the New Testament, where it talks about who God honor more, a rich person who brings in, you know, a little bit of their money, or somebody who's bringing in their last. It's not like God is expecting everybody to go to the extreme every single time and expect, God, I give you everything and I trust you. It's about, what did it actually cost you? What does it mean? It's a heart issue, because this is a relationship. With God, we're in a relationship. God is always looking at things as a relationship, not as a genie. A lot of people want God to be a genie, like, oh God, I want this. If you don't do what I want or what I think you should do, then I'm not interested. He wants to see a relationship. How much effort are you putting into this? It's the same, like, it's like having a cooking competition. They could have done the same thing. Cain and Abel could have had a cooking competition, right? And God could have been like, okay, you guys cook me some food. And then Cain, essentially in this scenario, basically could have just gone and, you know, boiled some potatoes, not even peeled them, and then sprinkled some salt and pepper at the end, right? And Abel's gone out of his way to make a 9-course meal. How are you going to feel about the difference of the effort in those two people? Because a lot of people who you might appreciate their cooking or whatever, it's because they put this extra effort into it and what it says about how they value you and what you've done. So let's go to the next part and see how God responds. So Cain, this is verse 5 now, but for Cain and his offering he had no regard, so Cain was very angry and his face fell. I personally think God was looking at Cain like, bruh, you ain't even trying, bruh. The Lord said to Cain, why are you angry? Why has your face fallen? Right? As in, how are you the upset one here? Like, you didn't even make any effort. This is me now telling you what I feel like God would be saying in his head. Why are you angry? Why is your face fallen? If you do well, will you not be accepted? And if you do not do well, sin is crouching at your door. Its desire is contrary to you, but you must rule over it. This is where the difference between being wise and being a fool comes into it once again, right? Because God is saying, like, okay, this wasn't great. This might have to be a lesson. This is what I'm saying again about having this intimate relationship with God. But can you not do this again? Can we not next time try and do better? Can you not learn from your brother? Can you have the humility to see that there's maybe ask me, maybe even just, it doesn't say if they had this conversation, but why isn't Cain even at least asking, well, why do you value what Abel did more than what I did? That would have been helpful, not just for him, but also for those of us reading here. But God is also telling him that if you do not, what is he saying? If you do not do well, sin is crouching at your door. Its desire is contrary to you. You must rule over it. As in, the kingdom of darkness, the stubbornness of Satan, the foolishness of the kingdom of darkness is going to now tempt him to now just be jealous for about something he could actually do. And this is what foolish people in the world do. I found that a lot of winners in this life, people who win at life, a lot of them, they have haters. They have haters who are just like so obsessed with them, so obsessed with what they did, instead of them taking the time to just correct things for themselves, as in they could really find a way to go and correct things for themselves, to go and focus on what they're doing. Okay, you're jealous that your friend has become a famous chef. Maybe it's your job. Maybe you're going to become a famous tech giant, but you're so busy obsessing over the fact that that person is a famous chef and they're getting more acknowledgement for that, that you're not you're focusing on that, and now jealousy is there. And now guess what the jealousy opens the door to? And this is what God is going to say next, right? I'm going to open the door to murder. And now you're going to do something that you can't take back, because now you'll become a slave to your emotions because you couldn't have just humbled yourself, right? That's foolish, right? In verse 8, Cain spoke to his brother. Cain spoke to Abel his brother, and when they were in the field, Cain rose up against his brother Abel and killed him. Then the Lord said to Cain, "Where is Abel your brother?" He said, "I do not know. Am I my brother's keeper?" So now Cain has an attitude like, "Oh Lord," it's like, not like Cain's like, "Oh Lord, why are you so in favor of Abel? Of course you're coming to find Abel your favorite." And God's like, literally try to give you another opportunity. And then even when you failed, I tried to warn you that you better not respond in what your natural feelings, going back to not trusting your own opinions, right? What we just talked about. I'm trying to help you out, right? And this is how God is. This is how his wisdom works. Like, as a good father, like, I'm trying to warn you of what's going to happen. Still does what he does anyways, right? And then now Cable's coming to God with attitude. Verse 10, and the Lord said, "What have you done? The voice of your brother's blood is crying to me from the ground, and now you are cursed from the ground which has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. When you work the ground, it shall no longer yield to you its strength. You shall be a fugitive and a wanderer on earth." So now Cain went from a situation where he could have, just gone back to the drawing board, tried again next season, tried again next harvest, but instead, in his foolishness, rather than being wise and learning from what his brother had done, or asking God, or asking even Abel, why did you specifically give God, the fat portions and the firstborn? What was that about? Maybe he didn't know, right? And this is why I always say that, God, I believe, is so open-minded. He knows we don't know everything. You can see this here. He's like, okay, that wasn't good enough. I'm not gonna give you the participation award and make you feel good, but I will say that you have another opportunity. And God had notice there was no negative consequences at that point. When did the negative consequences came? When Cain, didn't take acknowledgement for what he did and didn't take a wise step, right? He was an idiot. And now he's been cursed. The ground is no longer going to feed him anymore, right? He's messing up his own entropy, right? He's planted the wrong seed. And now Abel's blood is crying. Abel died. That was the end of the story of Abel. Cain went on. And by the way, guys, you should read the Bible. Cain's lineage is very interesting, where Cain's lineage goes to connect in connection to where we are today. But the point is, what I'm trying to say is, now he's punished. And that's why I actually think it's called giving your first fruits. This doesn't say giving your firstborn, whatever. I think God uses the term first fruits is because that's the mistake that Cain made, and it's the mistake that a lot of us make. And it's not about the money. It's not about the giving you the first of your flock. It's about your heart posture in this relationship with God. And that's where the wisdom portion comes into it. So I know I really went off the side to explain that, but I felt it was important. So I'll just recap that verse again and we'll continue. So it says, number 9, glorify God with all your wealth, honoring him with your first fruits, with every increase that comes to you. Then every dimension of your life will overflow with blessings from an uncontainable source of inner joy. As in, when you have that relationship with God, when you have that reverence, when you have that trust, when you build that intimate relationship with him, you then get to benefit off of the benefits of being in that relationship. I say this to people all the time. People will be upset that God didn't do something in their life. And I'm like, where in society do we ever have relationships where you're in a relationship with somebody, you do nothing, and yet you gain everything that person has to offer? A lot of us would see that as somewhat level of abusive, right? Or unhealthy or toxic. So why do people try and forge that type of relationship with God? If you want to have a relationship with him, you got to have a relationship, and not just one like, I'm going to pretend to hold my hands on Sunday in church just to look sanctified for everybody else, when in reality, deep down, God knows you're not even bothered to be there. Do you see what I'm saying? He'd rather you just tell him you're not bothered to be there and then deal with it. Maybe you're not even supposed to be there. Maybe he's like, dang, I was waiting for you to say that because actually I had a better place where I thought you should be, or actually I wanted to talk to you in this way. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, I'm trying not to make this long because I know this chapter is like longer than the other ones, and I may have to split this into 2 because we're not even halfway through. Woo! Anyway, verse 11. My child, when the Lord God speaks to you, never take his words lightly and never be upset when he corrects you. So this is another thing. It's good to have the correction of a parent. It's good to have the discipline of a parent, because it usually means they're trying to tell you that there is a very serious reason why I'm trying to stop you from doing this, or why I'm trying to prevent you, or whatever, but I need, but you might not get it, and I need you to trust me. And I'm making you feel so uncomfortable because I'm trying to give you a wake-up call, right? And that's what I think is so healthy to have from a parent. There's too many parents today, if you ask me, who are just letting their kids get away with anything. I've talked to you guys about how I made a video and I was talking about how parents today, I was talking to you guys today about how parents today will be in the position where they like I was watching these videos of these like 12-year-old girls twerking on Instagram, on TikTok, and their parents are literally in the background watching it. And now they might be watching it with a sour face, not happy about it, but they're letting it happen. Do you know what I won't even explain, but you guys get where I'm coming from, right? Those kids, it might be all fun and games right now, right? But when they're older and they look back at the trauma, when they're so used to overly sexualizing themselves and doing all this stuff they shouldn't be doing, and they're dealing with the childhood trauma, you see what I'm saying? So yeah, let's continue, because I don't want to make go on to any point for too long, because I will talk forever probably about any verse here. Verse 12, for the father's discipline comes only from his passionate love and pleasure for you. So that's basically reinforcing what I just said. Even when it seems like his correction is harsh, it's still better than any father on earth who gives to his child. Blessings pour over the ones who find wisdom, for they have obtained living understanding. Oh, I like this. So when you have wisdom, you're going to live well because you're going to have the wisdom to live well. It's like with money. People will say, oh, I'd rather, like, if I had 10 million, I want 10 million. A lot of people win the lottery. Why do they go broke within a year, 2 years? They don't have the wisdom to use that money well, right? You can have all the opportunity, and that's why I don't really think, that's why I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I actually prioritize searching for wisdom more than I do money, this, that, and the other, or anything else at this point. Because I realize that if I have wisdom, it really doesn't matter what I have. I could have nothing and I could create everything if I have wisdom. Do you know what I mean? 14, as wisdom increases, a great treasure is imparted, greater than many bars of refined gold. See what I mean? I love this. I promise you guys I didn't do this on purpose. 15, it is a more valuable commodity than gold and gemstones, for there is nothing you desire that could compare to her. Oh, we'll come back to this whole, how we're going to talk as well about how Proverbs talks about wisdom with a like female pronoun. I'm going to talk about why I believe the Bible does that. Verse 16, wisdom extends to you long life in one hand and wealth and promotion in the other. Out of her mouth flows righteousness, and her words release both law and mercy. The ways of wisdom are sweet, always drawing you into the place of wholeness. Seeking for her brings the discovery of untold blessings, for she is the healing tree of life to those who taste her fruits. Oh, yes, we're going to talk about this now. So why do I believe that the Bible is talking about wisdom as a her, right? Now, first things first, obviously, I believe that this is why I believe God's marriage and God's design is so perfect, because I believe that men are built to be experts in knowledge and women are built to be experts in wisdom, because knowledge is very much attached to facts, figures, logic, order, whereas wisdom can be very creative, right? A lot of the times God uses imagery and parables. Why? Because there is wisdom when there is a picture. You know, like how it says a picture, you know that phrase that says a picture tells 1,000 words? It's that kind of thing, right? Well, the problem with wisdom, and this is why I also believe men are supposed to be the head of the house, right, is wisdom has to be birthed out of knowledge. Wisdom has to be anchored in knowledge, because otherwise wisdom just becomes airy-fairy, right? And that's what you see a lot today. There's a lot of these like horoscopes and tarot cards and crystals, and there's like, you can tell there's some level of like sense to it, but it's just so airy-fairy that it's not beneficial to anybody. And that's what happens when you have wisdom without knowledge. That's why I believe the Bible talks about wisdom in a female tense, right? And that's also why I believe that God the Father is very much a masculine man, right? And his spirit, the Holy Spirit, which brings the wisdom, kind of does the similar roles and the similar characteristics of like what women do, right? And that's why I believe women are very intuitive characters. Women generally are very tapped in spiritually. We've got better discernment overall. We can sense things from people. We're very intuitive. We're very in the clouds. We're very creative, right? That's because that's the wisdom portion. And that's why I think in a marriage it works together, because you're feeding off of each other. As a husband, you might be thinking about something and your wife just sees a whole bunch of things you never saw. As a wife, right, sometimes the solution to your problem is way more simple than you thought, because you're so busy in the clouds, right? You know, like how they say that men's thinking is kind of like very like this to this. And it's very like men have like more of a compartmentalized brain, whereas women, we're just like all over the place, all over everywhere, all the time. And that's why we love to talk to our girlfriends, because when we're amongst women, we can just talk freely and we can get into details. And, you know, even scientifically, the female portion of the brain, the female characteristics are attached to being, you know, detail oriented, whereas the male part of the brain is what is it called, result oriented. So again, like I said, it's built to be a partnership. It's got both sides are things that come from God, right? The intelligence that comes from God, but they're expressed differently. And that's why I think that you have to have the head of the house, like I said, because then there's no wisdom without being rooted in knowledge. I heard it described like this, right? Where you have a kite, and a kite is like anchored into the ground. The kite can still fly freely, but it's not flying anywhere, if that makes sense. And so that's how I kind of look at it, that the wisdom has to be planted in the ground itself being knowledge, logic, things that make sense, right? And then wisdom can come off of that. And it's interesting how this specifically talks about the tree of life, right? Because Eve in the garden, like, there was 2 trees in the garden, the tree of life and the tree of knowledge. Well, there's probably loads more trees, but the ones that are mainly mentioned here in the Bible in Genesis 1 are, is it Genesis 1? Maybe Genesis 2 and 3. Anyway, the first 5 Genesises anyway, right? So there's the tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Now, knowledge, the seeking of knowledge, and this is where I think the trick comes in, where we as humans fall into this trap of, I want to seek knowledge and thinking it's going to get us somewhere. It doesn't. Eve ate from the tree, and that's where we are today. A lot of people be like, oh, God doesn't want humanity to have knowledge because he wants to just know everything and have that over you. But let's look at the world we're in today. Today, we, according to scientists and whatever, are the apex version of humans that have ever lived in thousands of years. But we have more mental health disorders than ever. There's poverty, there's this. We're not thriving. We're actually going downhill. We're actually going along with entropy, which, like I've told you guys before, is a scientific law that states we're moving from order to disorder. So it doesn't seem like we know what we're doing. It seems like we went down the rabbit hole that the Satan wants us to, of seeking knowledge, right, as opposed to seeking wisdom. Because wisdom would say that if you can have life, if you can eat from the tree of life, why does the tree of the knowledge of good and evil even matter? And here's another better question from wisdom. Wisdom would have it that if you have everything on earth, Adam and Eve were in that garden, they had everything on earth, right? All they couldn't do was one tree. So you mean to tell me, like, that to me sounds like the most ungrateful thing ever. You could have had anything else, right? It's like living with somebody. It's like living with somebody and saying, oh, there's just this one thing in the fridge, right? There's all this different food you can have anything, but can you please just leave my Kit Kats? Let's say, just don't eat my Kit Kats, right? Just one thing, right? And after everything that person's done for you, after everything God did for Adam and Eve, they're upset about the tree. And people are like that today, because they'll be like, oh, why did God not let them eat from the tree? Why would he stop them? Like, he gave them the world. He built Adam didn't even build the garden. Adam just literally came in, tended the garden. And do you know what Adam did? Adam didn't have to create the animals and do all the hard work. Do you know what Adam had to do? Name them. He named the animals. Do you know what I'm saying? And so that's why it doesn't really make sense. But that's also where I think we fall to this. And that's why it says in verse 18, seeking for her brings a discovery of untold blessings, for she is the healing tree of life to those who taste her fruits. So when God was like, oh, you decided to go down knowledge? Okay, you try life your way and let's see how it works out. And this is where we are now. And you know what he did after that? He's like, get out of the garden now. And even said to whoever he's talking to, which I suspect was, you know, the Holy Spirit and Jesus and also the angels and stuff who were there, right? Like, and he literally says to them, lest they eat the fruit of the tree of life. Now that they've realized that they've done the wrong thing, they need to get out of here before they realize, oh, well, they should just listen to me. They should have just, I gave you the tree of life to eat freely. That tree you could have had. And it's so funny, because this is what we want in life today. People want to live. People don't want to just survive. We want to thrive, right? We want the opportunity to live and live a good life, but instead we'll give that up for the sake of nonsense. And that is foolishness, right? That is foolishness. Eve should not have been seeking to know. What was the point? Do you see what I'm saying? And it's very interesting. And I think that's why, you know, again, head of the house, because Eve should have known with wisdom not to do that. And why did she not have that? Because she didn't have the knowledge. Interestingly enough, though, guys, I will say this, that if you actually read the story in the Bible, God actually told Adam not to eat from the tree before Eve came along, before Eve was even created. So take from that what you want. Anyways, let's continue. So verse 19, the Lord laid the earth's foundations with wisdom's blueprints. I've said this before. That I believe that wisdom is in creation itself, as in, that's why, anyway, I won't get into that. I will talk about this probably more another point. By his living understanding, all the universe came into being. By his divine revelation, he broke open the hidden fountains of the deep, bringing secret springs to the surface as the mist of the night dripped down from heaven. Right? So again, this creativity. He's saying you need wisdom in order to be creative, right? And that's what I think. That's why I think a lot of creatives are very spiritual, emotional people, because they're so tapped in a way to like the spiritual element of themselves. That's why, and this is a scary thought that a lot of us people who are creative have is where you become the most creative when you are in the most extreme emotional experiences. And it's kind of scary, because I even had somebody say, like, I'm worried that once I overcome my mental health issues, will I even be able to write good music anymore? I can't remember what artist said this, but some artist said that. And when they said that, I was like, yeah, I can relate. Usually my biggest revelations that I have, guys, is when I'm in the worst. I'll be just feeling so depressed for no reason for like a week, so depressed on the end of despair, and just when I think I can't handle it anymore, God will drop, this revelation will just drop on me, like one of the biggest revelations I've had in my entire life. It's crazy when that happens to me. Where are we? Oh yeah. My child, never drift off course from these two goals for your life. Aha. And these are actually the goals of my life right now, by the way. Walk in wisdom and to discover your purpose. Now, walk in wisdom. When you have wisdom, you'll live long, you'll live well, you'll be blessed. Discover your purpose. Because understanding purpose, and this is actually why I think I'm going to talk about this more in the upcoming video, where I'm going to be breaking down how to work out what your purpose is. I think when you understand your purpose, everything starts to click together, because a lot of times your purpose is, God created you for your purpose. So it starts to all match together. There's like 3 things that match together: your purpose, who you are, your desires, and who you are as a person, right? Those things are actually built to work together. And a lot of people don't find their purpose because they're so busy trying to go down this cookie cutter route of, you have to go to school and then go to work and then get this and then get this good job and this, that, and the other. That might not be the path for you. That might not be the way that your purpose is intended, right? And actually, I believe when people find their purpose, you actually become happy, because things that you might have thought were a negative thing about you, you might discover are actually a positive thing about you. Does that make sense? And I'll give you guys an example for myself. I'm like a very I'm not afraid of confrontation, okay? I know this is, and it's weird because a lot of people are, apparently. And I'm also very much an initiator, and it's one of those things that I've found, both of them, I found it annoying that sometimes I just can't help it. Like, because for me, if there's a group of people and if there's somebody taking advantage of a group of people and no one's speaking up, I will be the one to speak up. I don't care if I'm the youngest, I don't care if I'm a woman, I don't care. I will speak up, because I cannot stand to see people being taken advantage of. Now, I'm also an initiator, as in I'm always the type of person who initiates stuff, and whether that be good or bad, especially with shenanigans, I've always been the initiator. I used to get in trouble in school. They'd be like, you're the ringleader, like, and the teachers would always say annoying stuff like that to me. And so last year, especially, I started to feel really bad about that. Like, and I was saying to God, like, God, I hate being an initiator. I can see that I'm an initiator. Wherever I go, I'm always initiating stuff, right? And I had to realize that God is like, no, that's a good thing about you, because one thing he was highlighting to me was, how many times did you, because you initiated something, a bunch of people got justice who were not prepared to be the initiator themselves. And that has happened. This actually happened to me at one of my last place, the last job, actual job that I had. I say actual job, I mean like being employed by somebody else. And this is actually what happened to me. I was working at this place. I came there, and I'm always the person who always tries to help people discover their purpose, by the way. I've always done this. I always, like, one of the first few questions I always ask people when I have time to talk to them is, what is your big dream in life? Where do you want to go? Blah, 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 blah. And people always leave, like, excited and running after their dreams, and I love it, right? Anyway, so I'm at this job, and I used to go around saying this to the staff, and obviously the management didn't like this. I was doing this because people were getting happier as I was talking to them, and they were feeling empowered. And I mean, people start businesses, people change what their schedule, you know, I mean, people are doing well, right? And so I was at this workplace. I discovered that everybody was unhappy, right? And then I also discovered that the management was actually purposefully keeping me separate from certain other people that I would probably talk to. Anyways, so eventually what ends up happening, fast forward, is we end up literally setting up a meeting with the trustees of this place, because now that I've gotten involved and I'm like, guys, we need to do something. Everybody's so unhappy, because I'm watching everybody who's unhappy. Nobody's stepping forward, and I'm not happy to see I'm not one of those people who can work in a job and just see my colleagues struggling and sit back and this is what I'm saying, guys. I'm an initiator, okay? It's not something that I'm like trying to praise myself about. It's just literally a characteristic of mine that I literally cannot help. So anyway, I was like, we need to do something about this. My staff and people, like, this is the only job I've ever worked where it's normal that people take weeks off for mental health. I've never worked in a job like that before. So I was like, this is an issue. I'm not just going to watch your mental health deteriorate. If there's stuff I can do about it. In fact, I actually helped one of my my colleagues get time off work because they were abusing her a lot, because she's just way too nice. And I told her one day when she was having a really, really, really hard time, I just instructed her on how she was going to she was going to make this happen legally because they couldn't keep taking, you know, advantage of her like that. Anyway, she did get her time off. It was great. I was happy for her. So anyway, so we end up writing this letter, and there's 15 of us names who have signed up and put our names on this thing to say we want to talk with the trustees. And there was a whole Zoom Google Meet, what's it called, Teams meeting. And I mean, not a lot of the staff still didn't show up because they still cowered it out. I'm used to this used to happen to me in school as well. Like, and this is one of the reasons why sometimes I find girls drama so annoying, because I'm always a person in girls drama. This happened to me a number of times where if there's drama, if somebody starts gossiping about somebody else, I'm like, okay, let's go and talk to them and let's go and sort this out, because I'm not going to sit here and we're not going to gossip, because I don't do that. Okay. And so every time I do stuff like that, obviously by the time it comes to the actual confrontation, everybody's gone, everybody's hiding, and it's just me who's still there saying what I need to say. But I still showed up, I still said what I needed to say, I still relayed my points, whatever. But the point is, a lot of changes came after that. People were actually happier at work, that changes were made, and it was actually positive. Now, it was uncomfortable for me, and I felt bad in the moment. I felt like, oh, why are you always this like instigator? Why are you always like ruffling feathers? What, can't you just shut up and be quiet? But actually, God was showing to me that this is a good thing. Like, it's a good thing that you're like this, even if a lot of people don't like it, even if the management didn't like it. By the way, it's not the first time in a job that I've helped set the captives free, okay? I usually destroy the company. I'm not gonna lie, I usually destroy these situations, because once I leave, especially if I then leave, I then hear, oh, so-and-so left, so-and-so left. And it'll be people who've been in the job for years, right? And I was only there for less than a year. And I was like, I can't stand for this. And the thing I really can't stand for, I don't mind myself being badly treated, like I said, it's when it's other people is when it bothers me, you know? And so when I'm saying about all of this is me understanding, it helped me to understand that it all clings in together. The fact that I have this channel is also because I'm an initiator. I'm like, you know what, I don't care, I'll say what needs to be said, I'll confront what needs to be confronted. I'm not going to be silenced just because of A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Now, do I get made to feel bad about that a lot of the time? Yes. Is it key to the purpose, as in God has shown me that it's key to my purpose? Absolutely. And that's why I'm saying to you guys that it's so important. The world doesn't want you to have that, because the world would rather, like, I would get in trouble in school because I'm the type of person in school, I would anybody you sit me next to, I would talk to them. I used to know everybody's life story. I know what everybody's cat was doing. I knew who was in relationships. It didn't matter what you were in school. Every person I sat to, I used to talk to at length, and I'd be so interested in their life. And I used to get in trouble for talking at school. Like, oh, she talks so much. She's always talking. I remember until like year 9, the teachers always used to be like, she'd be so much more intelligent if she would stop talking. But it was part of my purpose. And as a teacher now, when I see students that talk, I don't tell them to stop talking. I utilize that because I understand that might be a part of their purpose, that they're so good at talking to others. How can I utilize this in a positive as opposed to making it into a negative? And that's why it's important to understand your purpose. And that's why I wanted to give you guys those examples, because those are real life examples of stuff. And bearing in mind, guys, this is, again, these situations I'm talking about, I'm usually like the youngest. I'm usually like one of the youngest people, and then I can see in the eyes of like management and whatever, they're like, who gave her the audacity? And I don't have the audacity. I just care about people too freaking much. Okay, I just can't stand to see people being hurt in front of me if I can do something about it. It's just a character trait of mine, and it's something that God made about me on purpose for a reason, because not everybody's like that, and that's okay. And that's completely okay. And that's also, again, what's helpful to me, because I'm good at bringing things out of people who are not like me, because I understand that not everybody's like me, and it's a good thing, you know what I mean? Anyway, it says, yeah, oh, I love this. I'll read this from verse 21 all over again. My child, never drift, of course, from these 2 goals for your life: to walk in wisdom and discover your purpose. Don't ever forget how they empower you. Exactly, I now feel empowered, right? Verse 22, for they strengthen you inside and out and inspire you to do what's right. You'll be energized and refreshed by the healing they bring. They give you living hope to guide you, and not one of life's tests will cause you to stumble. You will sleep like a baby, safe and sound. Your rest will be sweet and secure. It's so true, because I'll tell you something, guys. A lot of times when you have sleep, I'm somebody who's grown up with sleeping issues. I struggled to sleep since I was a child. I only started sleeping about a year and a couple of months ago, was when I started actually sleeping. My whole life I've struggled sleeping. I've always had nightmares and stuff, which I also believe is part of the kingdom of darkness attacking me in the area where God really wants to speak to me. I've had struggles sleeping, but I also realized that a lot of the struggles people have with sleeping, it's because of the things that they're trying to ignore and they're trying to suppress on the inside. And especially if you're trying to suppress who you really are as a person. And when I say who you really are, we have this new thing in society. I actually wrote a whole article about this, by the way, about how, in society today, we've made identity turn into things like your sexuality, what mental health disorder you have, what color skin you have. That's not your identity. Your identity is who you are as a person. Things about you Like, something about you might be that you love animals. That's part of your identity. That's more part of your identity, and you're willing to go to all these lengths. That's something that not everybody can easily have. It's not something that's just on the surface level. It's something that goes deep, that you care about, that you're motivated by. And so I realized the more that I sink into my purpose, the better I sleep. The more I'm just happy focusing on the wisdom of God, the less I'm swayed left and right by the troubles of the world or people's opinions. Right, and these are the things that actually stop people from sleeping. I won't get into it too much because I want to make sure we finish this within a good reasonable time. It's already 44 minutes. I can't believe it. I need this to be long though. Where are we? Verse 25. You will not be subject to terror, for it will not terrify you, nor will the disrespect be able to push you aside, because God is your confidence in times of crisis, keeping your heart at rest in every situation. This is so true. When you trust in God, like, no matter what's happening, it's not going to stress you out. Terror is not going to stress you out because you know who you are, you know whose you are, you know where you're going. That is something the world doesn't want you to have. That is something the kingdom of darkness does not want people to have, because as soon as you have that, all of their little tricks not powerful over you anymore, because they can, like, that's like with me. I'm like, what, you're gonna threaten my job? I don't care. I'll lose my job. God was my provider. He's my father. I will lose my job. I don't care. What are you gonna try and hold over me? Oh, I'm gonna be cancelled off the internet. Oh well, so what? You know what I'm saying? And when you get to that point, that is when you're really at that level of like, okay, the kingdom of darkness is like, okay, this person's a threat now. We need to try and shut them down. And that's what happens to a lot of people. You even see this is Andrew Tate at the moment, right? Now he's at that point where he's really not fearful of a lot of things. And I wish he was. I'm going to talk in a separate video about how I just don't think Islam is the best move, but I get why he's into Islam. But anyway, because it's like, he's like, I don't care, I'm going to say what I'm going to say, because as soon as you have that, as soon as you understand your purpose, as soon as you're on your pathway and you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, the terror is not going to get to you, right? Even in times of crisis. Verse 27. Why would you withhold payment on your debt when you have the ability to pay? Just do it. When your friend comes to ask you for a favor, why would you say perhaps tomorrow when you have money right there in your pocket? Help him today. Right? This is just basic wisdom, and I love this about the Bible. A lot of our problems in life are very simple, and sometimes we go to God, or we go to whatever to try and find some big solution as to what we need to do, and sometimes it's the most basic thing in front of you. Like, for example, if you have debts, right, and your debts are so big, maybe just find, well, what's an actual really realistic amount of money you can pay, start paying off, and just start paying it off now. Because if you'd done that 2 years ago, when you were complaining 2 years ago, you would have started paying it off by now. You might even have paid it all the way off. Do you see what I'm saying? And a lot of this is just basics. But then the other one is, he's saying, why wait to help somebody tomorrow? Help them today, right? Like, if you can do something, then just do it. Like, why do we overthink so much? And I think life is so much more simple. God is so simple, and God makes everything so simple. It's us who overcomplicate it. Life is very black and white. Very black and white, but we have made everything so grey. That's why gender is now a grey area. Everything's a grey area now. Mental health is a grey area. Everything's a grey area. That is to instill confusion. Because you know what confusion leads to? Confusion leads to lack of productivity. It leads to procrastination. It leads to you never doing the things you need to do. You know, verse 29. Why would you hold a grudge in your heart toward your neighbor who lives right next door? And why would you quarrel with those who have done nothing wrong to you? Is that a chip on your shoulder? Don't act like those bullies or learn their ways. Every violent thug is despised by the Lord, but every tender lover finds friendship with God, and he will hear his intimate secrets. So, kind of going back to Cain and Abel, even who we mentioned already, you know, first of all, God is looking at the heart. God can't, like, what you are is what you'll create. And I'll give you guys a perfect example of this, right? It's like in Naruto, right? In Naruto, you've got Naruto and Sasuke, right? And Naruto, they've both been through similar circumstances. They both don't have their families. They both are, you know, fighting to become these ninjas. Now, Sasuke starts off better off because the girls like him and he's more powerful, but there's a very distinct difference, because there's the battle between love and hate. And hate is something that comes from the kingdom of darkness, and love is something that comes from the kingdom of God. And love always wins. I really believe in that, right? And God will always partner with love, because love is an opportunity. That's why, even if you want to be successful in life, you have to have a respect for people and for human life and things like that to be used by the kingdom of heaven. You have to be tender-hearted. Why does it say that? Because in a relationship, in order for you to actually build healthy relationships, you have to love somebody when you have to be able to love people even at their worst. This is actually the key reason why I go hard for God. The hardest way that I do is because no one can ever outdo how the way God loved me when everybody else abandoned me in my worst moments. That is why I love God so I want to say violently, but it's not violently. I love him so unwaveringly, because I'm like, no matter what happens, I can have nothing ever again. And the love that I felt from God was like something that was more satisfying than any paycheck I've ever had, any success I've ever done, any compliment I've ever heard, anything else out there. To be loved at your worst. And that then promotes me to then want to love people at their worst as well, you know. And that's where God is coming from, right? Having hate, holding grudges, all this stuff, first of all, that stuff just burns away at you, because when you have hate and stuff, you become obsessed. It's like the jealous thing, and how Cain killed Abel. Abel was just doing what he needed to do. Cain is obsessing over Abel, and I've said this to you guys before, that jealous hateful people and non-jealous hateful people always have something in common. They're always both thinking and obsessing over the not jealous hateful person. If somebody's jealous of me, the thing we have in common is that they're always thinking about me, and I'm always thinking about me. I'm thinking about how I'm going to progress, how I'm going to go forward, and that's why I go forward. They're so busy obsessing about me, they're not looking at themselves, right? And so do you think that God wants to give his secrets to this person who's so hateful? No, he doesn't, because you're probably going to use it to try and destroy my life or destroy somebody else. In the same way I say to you guys, do you think if you have so much negative things to say about the opposite gender, why is God going to bring you a good man or woman into your life? For you to just, you know, contaminate them with your hatred? Of course not. But when you have the tender heart, he might bring you somebody, because they might have been through a lot. They might not be perfect, and he needs somebody that can be trusted with that. You know what I mean? There's so much I could say about that verse, but I won't, because I want to make sure that we get through this very soon. Oh yeah, verse 33. The wicked walk under God's constant curse, but the righteous walk under a stream of his blessing, for they seek to do what is right. Right? If you walk with the mockers, you will learn to mock, but God's grace and favor flow to the meek. I want to talk about meekness real quick. Meekness is similar to humility. It's not about like trying to like sit there and just be nice and not say anything. Meekness is being responsible, right? Being wise. I know I could do this, but I'm not going to. All right, I'll give you guys an example. As a woman, there's a lot of things that, like, there's a lot of opportunities in life. Right? Let's say, okay, I won't even say as a woman. Let's give a different example. Let's say you as a person getting confronted, right, by somebody else who's trying to beat you up, right? And it's a public space, and there's a lot of people watching. There's CCTV, there's police not too far, maybe not right there, maybe around the block, around the other block or whatever. And you, in your pride, don't want to let this person beat you because you care so much about what everybody thinks about you. And you know that you can defeat this person, right? Now, the prideful person will do it anyway, and then which would be foolish, because then they would have to deal with the consequences. A meek person would be able to say, you know what, this isn't worth it, and this isn't going to help the overall goal of what I need to do. And that's why I think meekness is very important, because you have to be the type of person who, a lot of times, especially as a winner, when you want to win in life, you have to be the type of person who can be meek when you need to be, right? Think about this. Think about if every time these famous like boxers, UFC fighters and stuff, if every time somebody probably tries to fight with them, they fought them in public, would they have the careers they have today? No, they'd be like, oh, this person is being violent. They can't afford to. Even if somebody is being disrespectful, they have to have the meekness in order to maintain the position they want to be in. That's a winning life strategy. And that's where the wisdom, I feel, comes from that. And last verse here, 35. Stubborn fools fill their lives with disgrace, but glory and honor rest upon the wise. Stubborn fools. Stubbornness is not a thing of wisdom, guys, because we should all have the humility, the meekness, and the wisdom to understand that we always should be prepared to learn and be told something is different. And that's what we don't have in society today. A lot of people are very stubborn in their way of thinking, and they're leading themselves to their own destruction. Destruction doesn't just come upon you because God hates you. You walk into destruction. I talked about this in the first day one of this whole series, so I recommend you guys go and check that out, because it's a really good video if you ask me. I say that about a lot of my videos. But you know, stubborn fools. Stubbornness is a fool. Those two things work together very, very well, because you should not be stubborn. You should be teachable. Why does the Bible tell us to be childlike? Because children are teachable. I'll tell you this, guys. One of the reasons why I don't really like adults in general, most adults, I prefer to be around children, because children are so open-minded and they're so teachable. I believe that's why God calls us the children of God and not the adults of God, because he's like, you need to be teachable. I need you to be open-minded to learn and to shift your paradigm. A lot of Christians, a lot of people today, the reason why they're stuck and they're still poor, they're still broke, they're still bound by mental health issues or whatever, it's because they're stubborn about something and they're not prepared to hear, you know what I'm saying, something new. They're not prepared to shift the way that they think. And wisdom is an ongoing thing. You're always going to be you should be always gaining wisdom day by day, right? And so that's why I think, you know, it says that. Let me just double check what the last bit was, because I feel like I missed something. They live their life with disgrace, right? Because when you're stubborn, think about how many people were stubborn about some of the decisions that people made in the last couple of years, right? And now with us seeing the results of what really happened and what was really going on or what wasn't going on, now a lot of people are in disgrace because they're like, oh, I wish I hadn't done that. That's what happens when you're a stubborn fool. Anyways, guys, I'm going to leave this here. I don't want to let this video get to an hour, but for whoever it's for, I'm sure you guys will make it to the end. And thank you guys so much for sticking by. Like I said, these videos, it's not for me to try and be like, I'm not trying to be out here being a pastor or anything. I'm just showing you guys, like, this is my thought process as I read through the scriptures and how I apply it to the things that are actually happening today. And it's also me kind of doing this with you guys, I'm really holding myself accountable, because I really want to do this myself, like for myself, whether people watch this or not. So I'm just doing this for YouTube. Really, one of the main reasons is to hold myself accountable, but also because wisdom is not something that gets often spoken about, and that's because wisdom always leads to godliness. I'm going to keep saying this. Knowledge will send you down the rabbit hole that will send you straight to hell, just like Adam and Eve. Why is it that when Eve and Adam ate from the tree, God said if you eat from the tree, you will die? Why did they not die immediately? Because what God was saying is, by following the rabbit hole of knowledge, by ignoring the wisdom of Him, ultimately it will lead to death and destruction. And that's what we see in the world today. And that is proved even by entropy, that states the world is always moving to disorder. When did that start? I wonder if that started when Eve made the unwise decision to eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, as opposed to eating from the tree of life. Anyways, guys, please let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Don't forget to hit the subscribe if you're feeling the vibe and you want to join the tribe. Don't forget to like this video. If life's a game, let's play to win. We're playing to win with wisdom in 2023. Can't wait to see you guys tomorrow for day 4, Proverbs 4. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Like I said, that was the Passion Translation. I also read a little bit from the ESV, English Standard Version. Download the YouVersion app. Highly recommend it. God bless every single one of you. And I'll see you in my next one. Goodbye.